Hi, and welcome to On the Road with Bobby Halton. We're live from FDIC 2008, and we're here with Bill Webb, the director of the Congressional Fire Services Institute, an old friend of FDIC and a great friend of mine. Bill, thank you this morning for giving us the update on what's happening with the Congressional Fire Services Institute. As we always do on the road, just a quick thumbnail to the folks who may be new to the fire service, newer viewers. What is the Congressional Fire Services Institute? What does it do for the American firefighter? And how can folks become a member? And it's a very small amount of money. I think as low as $15 or $25, yes. Isn't there?
Yeah.
So, and trust me, at the end of this video, go to the website. It's
www.cfsi.org.
CFSI.org, Congressional Fire Services Institute, CFSI.org. Spend $15, support these guys, and by the end of this brief conversation we're going to have here, you will understand it's the best $15 you can spend.
I appreciate that.
Bill, tell us about the Congressional Fire Service Institute.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing us to be a part of your program. It's been an outstanding program, and it's an incredible show. It's the premier show out there in the country. And what you have done in terms of educating the fire service about trying to get involved more with their local officials has paid dividends for the fire service as a whole, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
The Institute itself, we were formed back in 1989. We're a nonprofit, non-policy institute. And our basic mission is to work with members of Congress to educate them about the core issues that are affecting the fire and emergency services. You know, there are organizations out there doing outstanding work for their constituencies, the IFF, the IAFC, the NFPA, NBFC, et cetera, et cetera. But the purpose of our mission is to bring those organizations together and rally, again, around those core issues and using that synergy, using that energy among those organizations and use it for the collective good of the fire service in terms of educating Congress about what is out there, what are the true needs of the fire service. And you know, the federal government for 350 years really didn't have a significant role in providing local funding for the fire service. But you know, obviously since the tragedies of 9/11, there has been a wake-up call up on Capitol Hill. And now Congress wants to understand, okay, what do we really need to do to help prepare the fire service, you know, for those 22 million calls that occur, you know, throughout the year. So again, our primary mission is to bring everybody together, to bring the Congress together, and to bring the fire service together, and really think about, okay, what can we do to help the fire service?
And how do you do that? I know we do the Congressional Fire Services dinner where we actually sit down with congressmen and senators, and the collection that comes is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And that's one event, and I think most firefighters are fairly familiar with that. But all during the year, you and Sean and Tony, right?
Tom,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
new guy.
Yeah,
he is a new guy.
And he's a firefighter.
And Kara, lovely staff. You're up there on the Hill all the time, right? If they have a question, you guys try to answer.
We provide a number of services throughout the year. We'll do training programs. We'll take congressional staff members of Congress out and let them ride around on fire apparatus for an evening. We'll do training programs at the local training facility at the University of Maryland, put them in the turnout gear.
Kind of like Fire Ops 101.
Bingo. Let them play firefighter for a day, squirt the water, you know, on the fire, put them on the turnout gear, let them, you know, go into a controlled burn environment, you know, with radios and with all the equipment. But we'll do stuff up on the Hill on a weekly basis, monthly basis. We'll do workshops. We'll bring together folks from the fire administration. We'll bring folks from the U.S. Forest Service and talk about some of these issues. You know, talk about wildfire problems and what's going on out there in terms of, you know, the challenges facing our fire service in responding to those wildfires. The communication issues. You know, we'll bring experts from IFC and from APCO and from the communications side of the equation. Bring them up on Capitol Hill and tell them what the problem is in terms of radio interoperability and the need for more broadcast spectrum. We answer questions on a daily basis from Congress. Parochial issues happening at the local level, and again, it's very objective information. We're not putting any pressure on members of Congress. We're not a lobbyist organization, but we're user friendly, and our job is, again, just to get them more engaged. You know, up on Capitol Hill and back at the local level. What can they do to help their local fire departments become better trained, better equipped?
Well, one of the things I learned about your organization that I thought was interesting is the resolution process, where if you're a member of the arson investigators or the IAFF or the IAFC or National Volunteer Fire Council, or even if you have a friend you even let the magazine, myself, Harvey, all the major publications sit on this National Advisory Board. We bring forward a resolution to you. What do you do with those resolutions? How does that, what happens when someone from the Fire Service says to you, we need to look at better wildland interface interoperability, for example?
Yeah. You know, we have a role in the fire service, and the way we recognize our role is by bringing these resolutions forward. The National Advisory Committee is probably the largest advisory committee in the fire service, bringing in all the major organizations, and you know, there are the publications, and we've had some of the federal agencies, NIST, grandfathered into the committee. So we convene semi-annually, and any member of our advisory committee can bring resolutions forward for the consideration of the NAC. And those resolutions become our marching orders for the year. You know, we have supported the Fire Act. We have done a lot with we've supported issues that deal with spectrum issues, wildland. You know, and we've looked at issues that impact the IFF, issues that impact the NVFC. And so again, when we bring these resolutions forward, when we can get buy-in from the 45 organizations, you know, that speaks highly of what the fire service itself is trying to achieve in terms of bringing everyone together and showing a willingness to work on these core issues. You know, we recognize that there are those issues that are going to separate the fire organization. You know, the IFF might have their own, you know, issues that might not get the buy-in from the other organizations, and we recognize that, as do they. But when there are these core issues, you know, where we know we can work together and bring about some change that helps everybody, again, that is the focus of the NAC, and that is the focus of the resolutions process.
Well, and I'll tell you, the one very impressive thing, well, of the many things that the Congressional Fire Services Institute got done this year, probably the thing that I think is incredibly powerful was the work that you and Sean and the rest of your team did on the Hometown Heroes Act, which was really a miscommunication, not really between the fire service and the administration, but between the administration and its own staffers, if you will, because the government's a huge machine, and administrations come and go, but a lot of the staffers, as I understand it, or a lot of the folks that run these agencies have been there. They're experts in that field, and they know how to administrate. And there was a disconnect between what really the Congress and the President and the senators really all agreed on 100% for the Hometown Heroes Act, and the implementation of that act. And through your hard work and Sean's hard work, you know, and I know Sean worked tirelessly on this, that's changed, that's improved. Can you give us an update? And if people don't know what the Hometown Heroes Act is, that's the act that provides line of duty death benefits to firefighters that die subsequent to an event. And it could be up to 24 hours.
Heart attack, stroke related.
Heart attack, stroke related fire deaths. And wonderful act, and then there's a one-time payout. I believe it's $269,000.
It's closer to 300 now.
Closer to 300. Continues to rise, and I'm not sure how the formula works, but almost $300,000, which people don't understand. It sounds like a lot of money, but if you take a firefighter's earn and say $75,000, that's just 3 years of his pay, really, for the family, which is nothing.
Yeah.
And so, how did you get that corrected, and what's the status now? Because it was frozen. It was like it's a 5-year-old bill. And how many cases up to the Congressional Fire Service's intervention, so to speak, had been heard, and how many have been resolved now?
Well, you know, if you even step back, the legislation was signed, as you said. It was approved unanimously in both houses, and the president did a signing ceremony. And so we thought that the intent was there. We thought everyone knew what the intent of the legislation was. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, you know, the bureaucracy gets hold of it, and there were, you know, we did get a lot of support, you know, from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and I always like to tip my hat to Domingo Jerez, who runs the BJA program. You know, his father was a firefighter, so his heart was into it. But you know, as you said, somebody over at the Department of Justice and their legal counsel office got hold of this and decided, you know, to come up with his own interpretation of how the program should be implemented. And so that was the battle that we were fighting, you know, for like the last year, 2 years. And yes, I tip my hat to Sean Carroll, who did all the heavy lifting in our office, as did Hal Bruno for the foundation. When the program was starting to be implemented, you know, we were seeing only 4 claims approved and 48 rejected. That's not what we intended. That's not what Congress intended, and that's not what the administration, I believe, intended. And so again, we worked assiduously. We worked with the Department of Justice. We worked with our friends up on Capitol Hill, you know, to bring the message home to some of those people over at the Justice Department that you might want to take another look at how you're interpreting this program, because, you know, you're denying some good claims out there, and in the process, you're really making life miserable for some survivors, you know, of firefighters who paid that ultimate sacrifice to protect our communities. Now we're seeing we're seeing progress in the right direction, and I wish I had the figures in front of me. I alluded to them in my presentation earlier this morning. But we're seeing a huge change.
Huge turn.
I believe that now I think we're up to about 100 claims that have been approved. I think 80 have been rejected, but I think 30 are under appeal right now. And so
it's a lengthy process too. It's a medical review. It's real. God bless bureaucrats, because it's only a job that someone who's used to that kind of labor could do, and we don't understand. We see it as pretty cut and dry.
And I think what was happening at the Justice Department, you had an attorney, you had attorneys there who had no knowledge of the fire service. I remember sitting in on some meetings, and they really didn't understand the stress that goes into just responding to the call, just showing up at the incident. You know, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and all of a sudden going into a hostile environment. They didn't understand that, and so that was part of this learning curve. That was a part of the educational process that took part, you know, with CFSI, with the Fallen Firefighters Foundation, with all the other organizations that got involved in this process. I think we're on the right road now, and I think, you know, it's a sense of pride for our organization to be a part of this, to see that this change is taking place. You know, a lot of times you look at, you know, the money you make and you think, you know, this is the reward. It's really not. It's not. And you know, you're a firefighter, and you know that money can only get you so far in terms of the reward that you experience. Having been a major part of that effort to turn around the program and seeing now that the family members are getting those benefits, I mean, that speaks volumes about what we're trying to achieve, what Fire Engineer is trying to achieve, what CFSI is trying to achieve, and what all the other organizations are trying to achieve.
So what's coming up this year for you? What's the big targets for?
You know, right now we're looking at the appropriations process. We're coming up on an election year. You know, we've got 3, you know, presidential candidates. We've got members of Congress that are up for re-election, and you know, when you enter a presidential election, you know, Congress pretty much comes to a grinding halt. You know, they select their legislation, and a lot of it is partisan driven. You know, let's stick a bill before the Congress, and let's see how Obama's going to vote. Let's see how McCain's going to vote. Let's see how Clinton's going to vote. And you know, it's a part of the process. It's the nature of the beast. So you know, a lot of our focus is going to be on getting the SAFER program and the Fire Act funded, getting some of those other pieces of legislation funded, and you know, we've got our work cut out for us. But you know, what has impressed me most in my work at CFSI is seeing, you know, firefighters all of a sudden getting engaged in this process.
Right.
Working with their local leaders. As I've always said, politics is local. Tip O'Neill. That's Politics 101. And I think the more that we can get folks to read your columns, and the more that we can get firefighters to become more involved in these issues, I think the better off we'll be. You know, in closing, we did this big event on the mall. You know, we did our big dinner last week, and when you hear the chairman of the police caucus say, you know, the police don't really have their act together like the fire service. The fire service is now speaking in one voice. That speaks volumes of what we have achieved. It's not an attack, or it's no slam against law enforcement, but it really speaks highly of how far we've come. You know, 1998, the COPS program was getting $1.2 billion, and you know, now it's funded at $20 million. Fire grant was funded at $750. It's now funded at approximately about $560 million. You know, the fact that we can continue to get that program funding at the level that we are, I think speaks volumes of the work that we're all doing.
I do too. Bill, it was great that you stopped by. Thank you for speaking this morning.
Appreciate it.
We'll see you on the stage again next year, and we always appreciate having you here with us. I'm Bobby Halton. This is Bill Webb. We're on the road, and you be careful out there.